If you're ready to stop building someone else's dream and start creating your own, join our free community, the Self-Directed Network, at acesmanagementinc.com/school. It's where people leaving their W-2s come together to build freedom, purpose, and momentum toward what's next. Welcome to Life After W-2. I'm your host, John Chan. After 17 years in corporate America, I made the leap to build my own business. It was messier than I thought it would be, but also full of valuable lessons I didn't know I needed. This show is about sharing shifts in mindset, pivots in strategy, and personal changes that come with pursuing financial freedom. You're not alone in this. We're all figuring it out, one step at a time. Welcome to Life After W-2. Today, I'm joined by Nicholas, whose journey is anything but traditional. He started out in restaurant jobs and internships, worked his way into ESPN, then made the bold move into freelancing to create more flexibility in his life. Along the way, he's learned that stability is an illusion and change is the only constant. We get into the power of networking, the reality behind the corporate zombie culture, and why struggle and self awareness are critical for growth. Nicholas shares how humility, community, and learning from mistakes shaped his path, and it gives us a preview of what's next, including a new book and a web series in the works. Nick, so great to have you.
Hey, great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your life as an employee.
So life as an employee, I started, I would suppose, as an employee. When I was in college, I had a number of restaurant jobs and things like that until I started working as a paid intern for PBS. I went the television entertainment route, so I did that until I graduated, and then took a few odd jobs with temp agencies to survive because it was hard to get my first job out of school until I landed my job at ESPN. But I had to take a contract job, so I was a W-2 on a contract, right?
Mhm.
So I wasn't necessarily an employee, but I was a contractor posed as an employee through this W-2, right? Temporary position, which is very common actually, versus the 1099, which is the strict contractor thing, right? That's a whole other thing. So I took a job stuffing envelopes in the HR department of ESPN. Got to know the HR person, said, "Hey, how do I get a job here?" And they said, between me and you, and I wouldn't say this outside of this, you have to know someone. And I'm like, well, I know you. So, and I had the skills, I had the resume. Back then you had a resume. I handed it to her, and then she took it, and I got a call like the next day. Started the job as a production assistant, paid W-2 employee for ESPN. During that time, Disney eventually bought them. Things started changing. I managed to kind of evolve and develop and grow there to being an associate director for them within the first 6 months. Stayed for about a few years and eventually felt like I wasn't going to go anywhere. I was kind of stuck doing the same thing. I was getting crazy hours. I wanted to make movies, tell stories. I didn't see how I was going to do my stories other than sports. And so, as much as there were a myriad of people that wanted to have that job, I felt I wanted some more flexibility and time. So I quit. And that's when I started floundering for a while, starting my own production business and getting only sports related gigs at like Madison Square Garden and things like that until eventually started taking some programming classes and other things. And as a contractor, started diversifying what kind of productions I can do, niche myself into like productions for like IT training. And then for the last 20 years, I've been essentially a contractor, but working through my own business for various Fortune 500 companies and even smaller ones, kind of skirting the balance between entertainment related content and more what we call industrials or corporate training videos and things like that and learning and development.
Got it. So you went pretty much full force. I mean, when you decided that this your time at ESPN was over, I mean, how long did it take for you to go from, all right, this is what I want to do to actually making the jump?
Well, that's a great question in the sense that there wasn't like one moment. So I would say within short order, I was starting my own business because I realized that people weren't going to just call and knock on my door, right? And in order to get jobs, you had to go through referrals or through agents, and it was a tough time economically too back then. And so the doors weren't just opening for me, right? I hadn't planned that. I hadn't looked for something first. I was just desperate to have the time to do what I wanted to do. So I built a business while looking, and it wound up getting my own projects through my business, mostly through word of mouth or just kind of hitting the pavement and reaching out and saying, I have this production company. Here's my reel. I'm a former director from ESPN, associate director for ESPN. This is what I can do. And that's how it happened. And I would say it was over a period of a month or so. And then when do I know? This it's always constantly in flux. Like I was always looking for opportunities to do the things I wanted to do creatively and fit that into the schedule while taking projects to make money.
Right. So then what was that like financially? Because you made the jump pretty quickly and it sounds like you had a plan, but how much planning did you put into it?
Well, I had a plan to get out. I knew that much. And as far as planning to get into it, back then too, I mean, even internet research was different than it is now. I mean, now you could learn a lot just using your phone, right? And find out next steps and things and kind of put in what you want to do. There's really no excuse, I think, for anyone now. It's a matter of discipline and acting and then also facing one's fears. It's very scary to we're conditioned to believe we need to have that stable day job at a company. And the reality of that is different than the dream, so to speak, or even the hopes of stability. There's nothing stable. The world is constantly changing, and so are companies. And as such, I noticed that. I noticed my own father going through a difficult time as an engineer when engineers back in like the 80s were getting laid off left and right, started doing things like defense, Star Wars, defensive things through the Reagan administration, and eventually budget cuts and things changed and different people come into office and all of a sudden the thing he's doing is it's harder to do. So I think one thing I really, really learned is that there is no stability and that change is constant, and that all you can do is be prepared to pivot and roll with the punches, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean that's such a good point because even with my previous job as working consulting, I was doing low level programming, which is becoming very quickly becoming obsolete. You can just tell a computer exactly what is it you want it to do, and it spits out all the data. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall there. Uh, I can only imagine what it was like back then. I mean, it's just, but so you go and you start your own business. You start your own venture. I mean, how do you get in front of people?
Yeah, well, a lot of that again to start will be what you've done before. I had ESPN on my resume. I had real experience. I worked for PBS as well. So now what you consider a subject matter expert, so to speak, right? So I'm selling that. And then it's a matter of when you work in those industries or whatever industry you've done, if you already have some experience, you have colleagues, people you know. So you ask them, you talk to them, you find out who they know. We all have associated friends. We've all networked and worked with other corporations in that kind of world or that arena, right? I was dealing with like announcers and production companies and remote, freelancers, things like that. So through that network, through that experience, you're going to tap into that first, I would think. And then it's also sometimes people go into schooling and then they get experience and support through a system or a school system. Internships are an opportunity too to get experience in areas that you haven't done anything before, so you get your resume. So those are a lot of it. And then the other thing is, and I talk about this in my blog, corporatezombiesurvival.com, everyone has the ability to start their own company. In the least, why don't you start a company and then work for your friend's company and then they work for your company? Now you have experience.
Yeah, uh, the resume and having ESPN and PBS on your resume definitely huge. Did you ever go through any kind of period of, well, yes, I have them, I have this experience, but am I good enough to do what it is I say I can do?
I think the fear of whether you can deliver is always there with everybody, right? But I think that's again what happens is you take smaller steps towards something and then you work towards something, and then the next thing you know, you are that expert or you've done what you've needed to do, right? It's if you're looking at this end goal and you see the end goal is like coming over the mountain or hitting the top of the mountain, even like thinking about hiking as an analogy, you see that mountain top, right? The peak you want to be at, or I think you want to be at, right?
Mm.
From the bottom point to that, the summit, like there seems like there's a lot of work, and there is. But if you take one step at a time in the direction of that summit, eventually, even if you're looking down each step of the way, you'll find you've gotten there, right? Or you haven't, or you stumbled, or you fell, or you found something else, and then maybe you found a new destination, which is also common. But I think it's about kind of compartmentalizing the steps to get there and not seeing and being overwhelmed by the big picture.
Yeah, it's like that advice. You can drive from the East Coast to the West Coast at night. You only need to see a couple hundred feet in front of you at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why that's also underrated is because I think people, we have a tendency in our culture, of course, we're going to be talking to people that have had some success, right? Because we want to emulate that. So we think they know better. But there's also luck and chance. And people underrate that because we want to feel like we're in control of our existence, right? So I love it when I see successful people say, you should do this to be where I am, right? Because you're not listening to the other people that maybe didn't get as lucky doing the same things.
Mhm.
And so we're not talking to them, right? And so the people we're talking to are already reinforcing their egos to believe that what they did actually resulted in their success. I'm not saying that we aren't in control of our success, but there's also going overboard. And I think overemphasizing that or overfeeding our egos and belief that we're in control of everything we can do can create fear and create anxiety and also make one feel disappointed in oneself because they did these things, they worked hard, and they weren't exactly where they thought they should be. And that's a delusion too.
Yeah, I think comparing yourself to someone else's journey is just it's a killer. Like it really hurts you because especially when you look at what people post on social media, they're only posting their wins. Very rarely are they posting their losses.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I mean, too, and it's normal. It's human nature. In Hollywood, they call it faking fabulous. So people never talk about the difficult stuff. They just fake it till you make it, right? And in doing so, they're creating that image, and all along the lines, they get to enjoy that persona, right? And people will treat you differently too. And then maybe they'll have opportunities because they feel that person already deserves it or has that success. But I think at the same time, everyone has that imposter syndrome, right? Because they on a deeper level I think they realize some of the greatest successes come from just being happy and being in the right place at the right time, right? But based on knowing what you want and knowing yourself and making the right choices, you've managed to put yourself in the right place at the right time. Or maybe you didn't, maybe it just happened to be there, but you were ready when you got there. And that's those are the keys.
Yeah, I love that because you never know what can happen, but you always want to make sure that you are prepared to take on any opportunity that comes to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I talk about that in my blog, Corporate Zombie Survival. So to me, I look at this perpetual change as life and our attempt to make it look like things aren't changing because fundamentally we're all afraid we're going to age and die. so,
Mhm.
so in doing so, we act like zombies. We become the living dead. We delude ourselves by living an unconscious existence, just going through the motions to pretend that things aren't changing and that we're not going to inevitably die. And then we live like the living dead, and we don't actually make choices that are going to make us feel fulfilled or reward our hearts and our minds, and that's really sad. And so I feel like the metaphor of surviving a zombie apocalypse is so apropos to our own existence in a systemized world, to the corporate world. Even the word corpus in corporation, corpus, corpse, corporation, it's a body, and it's a living personhood in some cases, legally in the United States, that never dies. You have to dissolve it. So much about the zombie metaphor and why I think it's so popular in our culture is because it reflects our lives on many levels. And in our attempt to avoid pain and suffering, zombies don't feel pain. They could like bang their head against the wall, lose an arm, still go at it, right? Um, they live forever. They're dead, but they're still doing stuff. They're still shopping at the mall. And so I think part of us feels like we want that, but we also don't want to be monsters. And so I think the reality is in our effort to try to accomplish those goals, which are impossible as humans, we become monsters. And that is the point of the blog. And so I'm hoping through that metaphor to help people live better lives, more fulfilling lives, and to be more successful in their life.
Yeah. So when did you come up with this whole concept of the corporate zombies?
Well, living it, but also working in the horror world. So I did a horror blog comedy web series called Hell's Kitty, which allowed, it sort of reflected my life trying to date in Los Angeles with a cat that was rumored to be possessed and very possessive of me. And so it became this thing that started growing in popularity. And eventually I started getting some famous people in the horror world to play as guest stars. And they would play as parodies of the roles that they were famous for in other famous horror movies. And they would be coming into the life of this struggling writer, horror writer, who couldn't write anything because his cat was terrorizing his life, right? And so that just became a thing where it started growing, and next thing you know, 20 views became hundreds of thousands of views, and then people that were celebrities were kind of partnering with me to kind of be a part of it because they wanted to show themselves in this fun series and jump on the train, so to speak. And then we were using it to promote nonprofits to help animals. So I was aligning with my inner purpose and what I loved. And it just grew. It got me managers. It got me attention in Hollywood. Became a comic book, a musical, a movie on Amazon right now. And so I've worked in the horrors of the horror world, and I've also worked in the horrors of the corporate world, and I saw a parallel. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And it's never really been done. And I was partly inspired too by the book Zombie Survival Guide by, I love Mel Brooks. His son, Max Brooks, did that. And he took it like seriously. Like he took this thing of like, if there was a zombie apocalypse, how would you survive it, right? And I thought that was really funny. But I thought that could be taken a step further to even be more subversive and powerful. And that would be, what if we are in a zombie apocalypse? It's just not what we were thinking exactly. Maybe not so supernatural, but more subtle. And we need to take it seriously how we get out of it, right? And so I took this fun concept and kind of made a serious blog that helps people and gives practical advice on how you can actually escape the corporate zombie apocalypse. And that's where it all came about.
No, that is an awesome story. We'll definitely have to put that in the description so people can read it. So,
Yeah.
can you describe your first year out on your own?
The first year when I
Yeah.
graduated. So the first year on my own, it took me a while, even though I had 2 years of experience working for PBS. I could not get a job. I mean, I spoke several languages. I could speak English, Spanish, and Italian. I had 2 years of real practical experience. I was an honors graduate, yet no one wanted to hire me. It was hard, and a lot of people too. They're sticking with their jobs when it's a difficult time, like right now, for example. The people don't want to take risks on new people too, and so it was really who you know as well. So I took a lot of jobs temping as a contractor. And that's how I got involved with contracting, actually. And I would do, Kelly Temp Services is the big one. I think they still exist. I was able to type fast and write. And there's a lot of odd jobs where people go on maternity leave, or people are maybe sick or in the hospital, or maybe it's a position that's temporary because it's just a project-based position and they need support, but they don't necessarily want to hire for it. And so there's plenty of these jobs where you can kind of come in as a contractor and fill in. So I would do that and different things, but I would also tell the agents I was working with that I wanted to be in entertainment. So they would specifically try to send me at those kind of jobs at an ESPN or a Fox, or somewhere that's entertainment based. And then once you get in the door and you have it on your resume and you've actually worked there, you meet people, they're more inclined to kind of give you a chance. And so my first few years was sort of struggling through these temp contractors. And the funny thing is, eventually I wound up back, but by my own choice, with more experience, being able to get in at greater pay, doing more of what I wanted to do.
So, I mean, when we go through, I don't think there's a ton that, I mean, you'll still learn when things are going well, but the fact that you had to go through and all that struggle of trying to find a job and get hired, I mean, how many valuable lessons do you think you learned during that period?
I mean, it'd be hard to count all the lessons. It's really what we make of it. But I think one thing people should really understand is that struggle is part of the journey for sure. And the truth is, we don't value things that come easily. Like, if the only reason why gold is valued is because it's precious and scarce. If we could suddenly fabricate it, gold would have no value. So in reality, the human experience, we value unique experiences, unique challenges. There's not a movie that exists that doesn't have conflict or challenges with the character. If it didn't, we would be bored and not watch it. So intrinsically, we want that challenge. We crave that challenge. Otherwise, we probably, it depends on your belief system, but we probably wouldn't continue to live in this world. This world is filled with challenges. So if we think we don't want challenges or we want to give up or all these things are not part of the journey, we're deluding ourselves. But also on a profound level, we actually probably do want it. And it's really the fear of not being able to overcome it that gets overwhelming sometimes. So I think it's more about recognizing challenges are part of life, being aware of it, and then how can we grow from it? How can we learn from it? How can we feel proud that we've been able to surmount it and put ourselves in a different place?
Yeah. Well, after going through everything that you've been through, if you were if you had a time machine and you could go back and talk to yourself at ESPN, what's some advice you'd give to yourself?
I've talked about that and thought about that, but time travel is not any more real than even that concept, right?
Yeah.
I don't look at hindsight's always 2020, as they say too, right? I don't look at that in that way because I don't think it necessarily helps in the sense that I would do the same thing I did back then if I erased all my experiences memory. But in terms of advice, and if someone wants to kind of feel like they can do something differently to avoid some of the pratfalls or things they've done, or maybe get somewhere sooner, I would also say that's probably an impossibility because everyone's so different and unique that what I did in that time and place will never exist for you. What I can say is that the more you know yourself, the more you're conscious of your choices, the more you are aware of why your value systems and beliefs are what they are and why you want what you want, the better you'll get there. The better the how, when, where, and what will show itself, and you'll be able to take action. And I think also the better the world will be too, because we won't be just unconsciously going through the motions or reacting all the time based on fear. We'll be more proactively settled and making choices that hopefully will guide us towards where we feel we want to be. And that may change too, and it probably will. And when it does, be aware of it because you're conscious, and then make those changes and roll with that as well, right? It's all part of the journey.
Yes, and knowing yourself and having some self awareness will definitely help.
Absolutely. There's so much in our culture right now that makes it hard to be self-aware. If you're a follower, you're following someone else. So how are you aware of what you are, right? If you're paying attention to someone else, right? And if we all want to be influencers, question is, well, how do we get to be an influencer? Some influencer inspired us. So who's following who and who's influencing who, right? It's very hard in this culture to know oneself. And unfortunately, it takes disconnecting actually and incubating and turning into oneself and meditation and all the things people don't want to do. They want to be scrolling and looking for something else outside of themselves, not going within themselves. And that is definitely not the path.
Yeah, what's funny? I was never really spiritual or anything, but after going through this journey, I've become way more spiritual.
hmm Yeah. So what is spiritual to you?
To me, it's understanding that it's not just you. There's some other higher power that you can just rely on and talk to, and just say, like, "This is I'm doing all the right things. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and whether it's good or bad now, it's just a perceived good or bad. Some things that the struggles that I'm going through now could be preparing me to be the person to then take advantage of the opportunities in the future."
Yeah. And also like what is good and bad, right? Um, it's all to some extent subjective and relative, right? What's good for you might be bad, received as bad for another, and vice versa. And we see that politically all the time where we don't seem aligned, right? But if you take a step back and say, okay, what do people really want? Well, they want to be happy, they want to feel safe, they want to be loved, right? Okay, I think we can all agree on that. Now, it's the how we get there and what we do that we fight about. But if we can step back and understand that we're all similar in those wants and needs, and then start to figure out, well, maybe we have different ways we think we need to go about that. Um, I think it's in that those discussions, it's starting with what makes us similar and why, that we can have empathy for others in their own struggle, and also maybe a little humility, which is something I don't see that much of anymore. Humility comes from human mistakes, and zombies don't make mistakes because they're monsters. They wouldn't be conscious enough to know if they did. Or feel the pain for that matter. The only pain they feel is the insatiable desire to consume. And what do? They want to eat brains, but they don't know how to use them. And in the end, they don't need them anyway because they're already dead. So they're into trinkets and loud noises and things that distract them, but nothing that actually gives them real value or meaning or wisdom, right?
Right.
And wisdom comes from a little bit of suffering, unfortunately. And that is very human. And wisdom comes from making mistakes. And that is very human. And compassion and humility comes from making mistakes and recognize that. And that is very human. And so I think the best advice I can give too for success or anything is the patience that comes with humility, that knowing we're just human. And leaning into our humanity is definitely the ticket to our survival, especially now more than ever.
It's such good advice. Um, yeah. So one of the last questions I always like to ask is, what's one of the biggest mindset hurdles you've had to get over?
The biggest mindset hurdle I've had to get over, again, that's also always changing. Not because I'm recognizing that this changes, and because I'm aware of my thoughts, and because I meditate daily. Um, it's hard to say what's the biggest. I would say when I'm acting unconsciously, that's definitely one of the biggest. When I'm not aware, and then suddenly I become aware, I realize, oh, you know, it would have been better if I was more aware from the beginning. I could have done this differently, but I wasn't aware, right? And you don't know what you don't know. So I don't beat myself up over it, but I try to inspire myself to be more aware moving forward, right? To be more understanding, conscious of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I think getting control of that monkey mind, getting control of that mind that's all over the place and doesn't want to be conscious. It wants to just go with the flow or turn away from myself has been a huge challenge. And then being confident that that's the right path, that I don't have to do what everyone else thinks I should be doing or out there, but I have to find what's authentic to me is also a huge challenge. But it's so rewarding, you know. And there's a subtle line between that too that I want to kind of make clear. There's a growing narcissism, I think, in our culture in general, and it's that just filtering everything through our own lens without recognizing. I think you mentioned it, the interconnectivity. Sort of you alluded to it, that we're all connected, and so I think in our self-awareness, we know I can only know you and understand your question through me, right? Because it's my eyes, my ears, and my background processing that, right? I can't really know who you are and why you're asking that question. So this may seem deeply philosophical, but I think it's important because I think it's important to recognize these things, to be aware that we're sharing this world together and that I'm going to perceive things through my limited lens, but that it's not just about me either, if that makes sense. And so it's about finding our tribe. And another thing, to go back to another thing in the corporate zombie survival, is you will not survive if you're a loner out there. You have to find your tribe, you know, and we have to find, connect with others, and not just kind of hole in. But at the same time, we have to maintain our individuality in the community. We can't become like the horde where we're filled with an army of others, but we're all the same and doing the same and thinking the same. That's bad too. So it's a
Right.
balance. Yeah. And so I think that's been my hurdle, balancing it all.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Nick, it's been a pleasure to have you. You've mentioned your blog a couple times. Is there anything else that you'd like to have people watch or take a look at?
Yeah, well, they can watch Hell's Kitty right now for Halloween. It's on Amazon. Comedy horror with me and my cat trying to find love in Los Angeles, with a possessive pet. And then there is Also, I've got a book coming out, E-Junkie. I've had it out through comics and through Scout Comics, but now the first hardcover special collector's edition is being published October 31st. So it'll be available for sale on most places where you buy books these days, as of this Halloween. And it warns of a future where the corporatocracy takes over and we lose our humanity and numb ourselves out through technology or emotional regulation technology. And so I think a lot of the concepts I'm exploring in corporatezombiesurvival.com get explored in a future sci-fi neo-noir kind of story in this book, which has some illustrations. I had one of the alternative covers in the book was done by the guy Derek Robertson, who created the Boys TV series. He created the Boys comic, which became a movie TV series. And there's some cool artists in there too. And I collected all the alternative colors ever distributed in this one book print too. So it has every issue all compiled in the one book. So E-Junkie, it's called EJUNKY for Experience Junkie is what it stands for. And I'm excited by that too.
Okay, very cool. So we will make sure to have your blog, the movie, and your book all in the description to make it easier for everyone to go consume it all. Thank you again for coming
Sounds
on.
great. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Keep me posted when it's out and I can promote it as well.
Absolutely. That's it for today's episode of Life After W2. I'm John Chan, and I appreciate you tuning in. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend who's ready to take control of their financial future. And if you're curious about how self-directed retirement accounts can unlock opportunities in alternative investing, grab our free guide. It's packed with insights to help you get started. The link's in the description. See you next time.